Hello, my name is Richard Duncan. I'm the Executive Director of the R.L. Mace Universal Design Institute located here in Asheville, North Carolina. I'm speaking with you today to provide what we're calling a deeper dive into the universal design features that we're requiring for the Raleigh Age-Friendly ADU Design Competition, which is called an ADU for You. So welcome to this session. It'll be between an hour and an hour and a half long, depending upon if we have any questions. And I'm happy to acknowledge that AARP Triangle has been a terrific supporter and is an underwriter and sponsor of this particular design competition. So we're grateful for their interest in this. This is the second of two webinars we're doing for this Raleigh Design Competition this fall. The first last year, the introduction to an ADU for You, covered the following topics. It covered the aging demographic and the terrific growth in that aging demographic that's happened over the past several decades that will continue for the next several decades to come, that really sets the stage for the urgency of paying more attention to housing options for older adults. We mentioned that the challenging choices that a lot of older adults have in terms of their housing is whether to remodel their own home, to look for alternatives in their communities, and how those are typically difficult or impossible to find. How the existing homes that many of us are aging in now provide real problems for us to be able to safely and independently maintain over time. We talked about a range of housing options and how ADUs fit in as one housing option that might work for some adults. We know that there's lots of housing options that might be possible. We know the accessory dwellings may not be for everyone, but for some folks, maybe for a lot of people, it may be an option that hasn't been considered and that could be a real benefit. And then we introduced age-friendly design itself. What are we talking about? We're talking about age-friendly design. How does it vary from traditional home design? And finally, we reviewed the competition logistics and the timeline. We mentioned then, and I'll mention again, here's the landing site for the competition. It's long but simple, betterlivingdesign.org/ADU for Raleigh. You go there and have everything we've got for the competition can be found there, including a terrific frequently asked question list that may answer a lot of questions that you may not have thought of even today. And of course, we have Hannah Peel, who's the design lead here at the Institute, with her email address and her phone number for any other questions now or over the next 6 weeks or so. So the deeper dive, today's session will talk about what our goals are for the competition. It'll talk about accessory dwelling design specific to this competition. We'll talk about the actual requirements for this competition and a little bit more to give you some additional context. We'll mention who we think the accessory dwellings might be good for, who they might benefit. I'll refer again to the competition logistics and the timeline towards the end, and then we'll talk about resources, of which there are many, happily, for universal design, age-friendly design, accessory dwellings, and so on. And then if we have time, and if there are any, we'll have questions that we can answer. Again, we have the FAQ portion of the landing page, which has a whole lot of questions asked and answered there. So our goals for the competition are fairly simple and straightforward. Improve housing options for older adults. As we covered last time, those options can be challenging or absent, and we think accessory dwellings can really help in that regard. We think that if you provide accessory dwellings designed for older adults, particularly, that you'll be providing healthier alternatives. And we know that accessory dwellings in almost every case are more affordable alternatives compared to traditional housing. And we think that by achieving these goals will allow seniors to remain in their communities as they age. So those are our 3 goals for the competition. Our objectives are as follows. Again, fairly simple. Increase the supply of accessory dwellings suitable for aging in place. We'll talk about aging in place in a minute. And particularly to generate several sets of plans eligible to become part of the Raleigh Fast Track program. As we said last week, Raleigh has already done great work in creating a gallery of plans that are appropriate for accessible housing in the city of Raleigh that are eligible for the Fast Track program. We intend to provide several more, the winning entries in this competition, to them so that age-friendly accessory dwelling designs can become part of that gallery of plans that they have available for folks. So we do think of accessory dwellings as a tool for aging in place. And they come in, as you can see here, all varieties of styles and design configurations. Some of them more appropriate and more easily adaptable to older adults than others. So aging in place is the goal for most adults. Research year after year, decade after decade says that we want to age in the place we're in. What we're really talking about, though, is aging successfully in the home that we're in. And that can happen a number of different ways. All of us are aging in place. Some of us can age more successfully than others, depending upon the kind of home that they're in. So the ability to live in one's own home and community safely, independently, and comfortably, regardless of age, income, or ability level. Pretty good goal. I think everybody can probably agree with that. So aging successfully is what we're after. And how can we enhance that possibility? This guy is my role model. It looks like he's hitting it hard in the gym. And better designed accessory dwellings will work for everyone. And even this guy is going to need a better home design at some point in his aging process, just like the rest of us. So we're talking about allowing folks to successfully age in place, meaning that you can maintain the activities of meaning and purpose, and that you have the ability to stay connected with family and community life. So maintain your lifestyle in the long term. We think that universal design applied to all dwellings, but certainly accessory dwellings can help enhance that. So we're talking about universal design applied to housing, and in terms of this competition, we're not talking about visitable homes. That's a fairly limited category of housing with a limited category of home features. We're not really concerned so much with being able to visit people in their homes, but able to provide homes that people can live in. So visibility isn't the goal, livability is really the goal. And we're not talking about accessible housing either, which is generally understood as being housing designed, particularly and especially for someone who operates from a seated position. You'll find that the UD homes and the age-friendly homes that we're talking about are much more usable by someone who uses a wheelchair. But we're not specifically customizing the house to that population of folks, although they're easily customizable, much more easily customizable than traditional housing. So we'll explain a little bit about that as we go along. All universal homes are age-friendly. Most age-friendly homes are universal. For the purposes of our competition, we'll use those terms kind of interchangeably. So the criteria we have, which is published and available on the website, is one of the 2 primary documents we'll refer you to. It looks like this. We have a fairly, we think, straightforward and limited listing of the features that we're looking for in the competition. And we do have this accompanying document that provides some additional background, in some cases, some additional explanation that goes beyond the bare bones of the competition requirements. So when we're talking about universal design, we're talking about design that has high function but has a mainstreamed appearance, which means that it can be appealing and marketable to a broad audience, not just an older adult and not just somebody with a disabling condition. If you come up with a design that has stereotypical features and has a stigmatizing appearance, it may be an accessible dwelling, but it's probably not a universally designed dwelling, and you haven't been successful in that regard. So that's key to the success of the designs we hope to see. While it's mainstreamed in appearance, we do think it has great flexibility over the long term, which means that it can adapt to people more easily. Everyone customizes their own home. Universally designed homes are no exception. If someone has a very particular need, they may need to do things like add grab bars, add a shower seat, may need to even alter the vanity in a bathroom, all relatively small scale procedures compared to what you might have to do in a traditional home to customize it. The flexibility that these houses offer with their mainstreamed appearance and high function mean that they work really well in the long term. Another thing to mention is scale. In this competition, we're trying hard not to force everyone to reveal minute levels of detail, but certainly universal design achieves its success at larger scales and at smaller scales. So it matters what kinds of foundations you use. It matters how you choose to grade the outside up into the entrance onto the porch or the patio or the deck. It matters about room size, particularly bathrooms and fixture arrangement. Things also matter to be successful in the type of thresholds you're planning, the type of door hardware you've thought about using, the type of switches and controls that you've got. So we're not requiring that you get down to this small level of detail in every respect. We're trying to achieve a balance of having you provide as much information as the jury will need to properly evaluate your plan compared to someone else's, but not overwhelm you with the amount of detail you might be providing, for instance, in a final design for a client. One thing to stress here is that we'd love to see alternate design ideas. We've got our criteria. If you've got an idea you think is a terrific idea you'd like to showcase, please consider it. And if you got questions for the competition, you can certainly contact Hannah and run it past her. We'd love to see new ideas and different ideas as a ways of achieving age-friendly design. So for this competition, we're looking at plans approximately 450, 800 square feet. 450 is apparently the lower limit size for the city of Raleigh, and 800 square feet is about the upper limit. So in this range would be appropriate. It needs to include a step-free entrance. It'll probably be including doors, not that there are many doors in an ADU, that might be wider than typical, 32 to 36 inches wide. A usable bathroom, which we'll talk about, the universal kitchen, laundry, which is frankly optional in some accessory dwellings, but we'll talk about that as well. And we think that because of the small size of these dwellings, that providing outdoor living space is really crucial. So the two of the broad categories that we divide the criteria into is around the house and inside the house. And we'll talk about around the house first. So we're not looking for steep slope paths. We're looking for graded pathways that have a 1 in 20 maximum slope. And if you've got pathways of any length, making sure they're wide enough to accommodate people, maybe with equipment that they're using, maybe two folks together who are maybe side by side. 42 inches wide minimum surface is what we're looking for. And if you're providing and showing outdoor living spaces, please make sure that they're on an accessible route of travel. At the entrance itself, we need to have one zero-step entrance, which means no step from deck up into the house with a covering over. We need to have something at least 60 by 72 inches wide. I'll talk about why in a second. And a level landing, which is important. You can't have a steep slope. Even a 5% slope would be too much. So essentially a technical level landing. And 32-inch wide entry door, not a big stretch for most entry doors. This is a picture here that is not of accessory dwelling, but it is an infill house that we did in the Raleigh area, actually. So it shows a number of the features we're talking about. So I'm showing it here to you now to kind of exemplify those things. So for one, it's got a gentle sloping pathway from the driveway to the right, up around the bushes onto the porch. The porch is at the same level as the first floor. The porch level is the same level as the first floor. It's got a roof overhang, which, as we say, is very important for two reasons. One is for the comfort of the older adult users, and the other is to prevent water infiltration from driven rain, from snow and ice accumulation. So we need to have that porch covering be of sufficient size. This is a big one, obviously. It's a whole porch, not just a roof overhang of the on the doorway. But the other reason is for older adults, for their comfort. We sometimes take longer coming and going from the house than you might at a younger age. And so providing weather protection for us during that process is important. While we're reaching for our keys, managing our packages. Another thing a roof overhang might provide is a place for a package shelf or a package bench, or even a chair where you can put things down while you're opening and closing the door, while you're entering and exiting. So both from the purposes of water infiltration and for the comfort and use of the individuals who are using it, roof overhangs are a great idea. This has stairs. Stairs are fine to include in your design. We don't show here what we'd like with all stepped entries, which is handrails. And so if you're going to have stairs of any kind, please include handrails so that folks, when they choose to use them, will have a safe thing to hang on to. And for your pathway, you need to avoid grass, gravel, sand, loose pavers, and so on. Firm, stable, and even is really the byword for that. And there's a lot of different options in those areas as well. So porch also provides this outdoor living space that we talked about as well. So again, two examples that are not ADUs, but shows graded entries up to porches with roof overhangs. The top right picture is actually a renovation. It was a nondescript front of a house with no roof overhang, no landing, no level pathway, with steps going down right up to the doorway with a little bit of a retaining wall and some fill. They're all decorated, an elegant entrance that really adds permanent value to the house as well. Great universal design solutions, a permanent addition to the house that adds value, we think, in many respects. So at the entry itself, you need to keep in mind, obviously size, and to keep in mind people and the equipment they might be using, as well as including the fact that as an older adult, you don't want to be standing on a sloped surface as I described. So providing an adequate latch side clearance and at least a 5x5 space that's got that's a level platform and that's clear of other obstructions of any kind is really preferred, both outside the house and inside the house. Again, there's not that much in the way of doors and doorways inside ADUs, but we're using this as a reminder. I'll mention it again in a minute. So here's a renovation. We're not calling for renovations in this competition, but it looks like this is a garage renovation. As a result, it does have a step-free entrance, as you can see. It also has a kind of a small roof overhang, not really the size I think that would be most beneficial, but it does have at least a small version of this. So step-free entrance and roof overhang are these two important elements to provide. I mentioned that universal design is realized at both large scale and small scale. And in this case, this is taken from one of our other publications that deals with renovations, but it shows you the outside decking coming right up to the sill plate of the threshold, and a very low profile threshold as well. So this is the kind of thing we're looking for that your client would be best served by if he were designing something for an older adult that was universally and age-friendly designed. What we're not looking for are ramps. I've designed, built, funded hundreds of ramps around the country. And so I'm very familiar with them. I know that they're unavoidable in a lot of renovation situations. But for this competition, we're really not looking for ramp solutions from folks. We really hope that you can emphasize the graded entry as much as possible. This happens not to be a terrible ramp in that it's got a nice graded walkway up to the base of it. It's sturdy. It doesn't have any handrails, unfortunately. And it doesn't have a roof overhang, because even with ramps, you'd need to have a roof overhang as well. So there's some deficits to this, but this actually isn't a bad ramp. We're not looking for ramps, though. And ramps often have a lot of negative features, including the fact that they're often not cared for very well, not painted, not kept up. So they look bad. They don't really add value to a home, and they're things that have to be torn down often when occupancy changes. So graded entries are really the way to go for that. So that's the end of our very few requirements outside. Emphasis on graded entries, not ramps, and adequate maneuvering space outside. So inside the house, again, these are very small dwellings, and this is not an image of an ADU. You'll see plenty of those coming up, but just emphasizes some of the things. We're not requiring a 3-foot path of travel, but that's always a good thing to keep in mind. Again, the very few hallways, but 42-inch wide hallways, and not that many doors, at least a 32-inch wide door. And if you have cased openings, you may have a cased opening, at least a 36-inch wide cased opening would be required. So if you got, for instance, if you're using a barn door or sliding door, pocket door of some kind, I think it'd be at least 32 inches wide in the opening is what we're looking for. And again, the same kind of latch side clearance on especially on the pull side of the door, right? 18 to 24 inches. And you may not have any on the inside. You may use exclusively pocket doors and save yourself some swing space. Again, very few hallways in accessory dwellings. If you've got them, minimum 42 inches. This is a small-ish sized ADU. In this case, we used pocket doors to eliminate the door swing and to maximize the interior space in rooms, particularly in the bathroom. And windows wind up being another big deal. It's one of these areas where we're talking about maximum heights on things. So we don't want to have a hardware above 48 inches, and we'd like to have the controls that are easily operable on the windows. This typically takes single or double hung windows out of the running. Although, I'm happy the product design, marches along every year, and we don't always keep up. So if you find some unusual window design that works well from an operability perspective, we'd love to see it. So moving into bathrooms, adequate maneuvering space inside at the key fixture locations is important. That's not kind of a stretch there. We're looking for, in particular, space that's around the toilet. I get my slides to advance, we'll do this. Space around the toilet that's appropriate in size. And we'll show you some examples here where it works out. There's a lot of ways you can achieve this, but in this case, this is again a pretty small dwelling, really kind of a studio apartment size thing, where you've got a good bathing fixture. We like step-free, curbless, low threshold showers. It's got a toilet in the corner, but it actually shows 2 grab bars installed. We're not looking for grab bars. We're not asking for grab bars or even future grab bar installation locations, because you never know where you're going to need them, where the older person is going to need them. So don't worry about including that. But this has all the adequate space that you need around here, as well as space next to the fixture to access the controls easily. And it also has this out swinging door, which provides even more usable space inside here. You're not fighting the door swing as it swings into the bathroom. We do want blocking. And this is the kind of blocking, we don't have to show this in terms of cross sections, but you need to be mindful of this. This is the kind of blocking we're looking for in bathrooms. Sheet product, 3/4 plywood, around the toilet area and in the bathing fixture, regardless of what you've got. So the grab bars can be installed wherever they're needed and not needing to be arbitrarily located according to where the studs are. That's an important thing to keep in mind. And we're not requiring any detailing on kind of interior bathroom accessories, but the thing to keep in mind is that if you were designing this for a client who maybe didn't need a grab bar right away, it would be great to include these dual purpose fixtures that are becoming more and more, accessories are becoming more and more popular these days. In this case, it's this dual function towel bar with a handhold on top and the towel bar function down below, or a soap dish that does double duty as well. All of these firmly and securely mounted into the wall. If you've got the blocking, people can mount this whenever they want to. We're also not requiring that you specify toilet type, but we thought we'd mention this. Is this for future reference, perhaps? Or you could choose to include this. Comfort high toilets are really not necessarily a universal design standard that lots of folks would choose them to be. They're an interesting option. And in other kinds of dwellings, if you've got 2 bathrooms, having a high toilet and a standard height toilet would be terrific. In this case, it would really be up to the client as to whether they could use a higher toilet conveniently and safely. Not all older adults can. Sometimes a higher toilet, if you can manage it, helps when you're using the toilet for some older adults. So that's a thing to keep in mind. And it's easier, obviously, to get down onto and up off of. So many varieties of curbless showers, including, fiberglass manufactured units, very low threshold here, at least 3 feet deep if you're going to do this. 3x5 is fine. You could do it with a fiberglass unit. You could do it with a tile. Even looks more elegant in this case. You can see that you've got the folding seat that someone has decided to add as well. We love folding seats in showers because they get out of the way when you don't need them. You can put them down when you do need them. You can always add a floor standing bench too if you needed to. So continuing on, control locations matter. I may have showed last week the circumstance where someone, even if you're not using a wheelchair, you're wedged next to a toilet in our standard bathrooms and put into an awkward position, both balance-wise and reach-wise, and locating controls and bathing fixtures that are unobstructed by something that's adjacent, like a cabinet or a toilet, and then are offset, can make a huge difference in safe and independent use for much longer. So that's our talk on bathrooms. Now we'll move into the laundry area. So again, it may not be possible to put a laundry in every accessory dwelling. It seems like the sizes in this competition probably will allow something, but making sure the space is accessible and making sure the kind of laundry fixture appliance that you're specifying is more usable will make a big difference. So the gold standard is the side-by-side floor mounted front control and front loading washer and dryer. This provides you with the easy access to the controls, easy access to seeing the controls as well as manipulating the controls. They're front loading, so you have easier access in the washer than having to reach down into the top of a top loading washer. And they're adjustable in height. You can locate them here. This is my mom, in fact. She's 5 feet tall, was 5 feet tall. This is even too low for her. So I think up 6 inches would have been a much better height for her to minimize strain on her back and reaching in and out for wet and dry clothes items. If you put it up high enough, you can actually get storage below, which can sometimes be an advantage. And at the right height for some folks, there's actually a work surface that's above, as you can see here. So that's the gold standard. Not all the ADUs can accommodate these because of the amount of space that's in there. And there are other options, and we don't ordinarily see many of these things discussed, so we decided to mention them here. So you can see this. These are the full-size units that are stacked, but crucially, they have controls that are reachable for both the lower and the upper unit. And that makes a big difference. I've seen stacked units that have the controls up above on the top one, which makes no sense. I've seen this in the homes of older adults with a stool placed in front of the washer dryer, which seems like a recipe for disaster. So if you're going to specify something like this, make sure it's with the controls as you see here in this picture. And again, this may be overkill for an accessory dwelling, maybe way more appliance than is needed, and maybe more appliance than space can accommodate. In this case, you see in this one, 525 square feet, they decided, okay, we have enough space to put this in here. Okay, they can locate that. You could, if you wanted to, with an over-under, have the smaller sized, still has the controls that are reachable height. Not ideal, right? Ergonomically, reaching up high and having to pull things, put things in and pull things out isn't perfect, but can make a difference. And ultimately, it may be that we graduate towards the single unit that's both compact and you put dirty clothes in and take clean dry clothes out. That may be the future for some folks. If they've begun with one arrangement of washer dryer, this may be what they wind up with in the end to maintain some laundry function in the house. So in kitchens, again, we're specifying certain elements that may not be frequent in ADU kitchens, but you need to have enough space in the kitchen to maneuver around. We're anticipating someone may have a piece of equipment to operate. We want to provide enough space for that to happen. Let me see if I can get this to advance. There we go. Again, back to our 525 square foot model. And you can see in some of these small units, maybe a challenge to kind of figure out how to work it, seating and a dining table and dining functions into a kitchen. This seems like, while it's interesting, probably is not something that's going to survive very long in use, because the kitchen table and the chair is going to be blocking really any significant access. And whether you feel like you can, duplicate kitchen table and dining functions elsewhere, whether you choose to expand the floor surface of the kitchen into what might be the living area and move the table out, whether you choose some other option might be of your own choice. Might be some interesting things to be thinking about there, but this looks like it's not that workable in a real sense. So here's the larger size that we've shown here, and it looks like they might even be talking about having an island, which again may really cramp the workspace. Even if they move that island to a different location, it might be more workable in this particular kitchen. They've chosen to locate a dining table and chairs out in this space. It seems like they've got probably more action going on in that living and dining area than they might be able to accommodate in terms of real world use. But these are just some ideas to be thinking about. And they also included what looks like this over-under washer dryer situation here. Again, not optimal from an ergonomics perspective, but maybe with these small dwellings, the best that can be done. We'd love to see what you come up with. Okay, in terms of other elements of the kitchen, we'd love to see drawer-based cabinets as opposed to base cabinets with doors. Older adults don't like getting down on their hands and knees. They have a hard time getting down on their hands and knees, fishing things out of the back of cabinets. And so if you can eliminate them as much as possible, that's a terrific idea. We also like to see cabinets that have usable controls. So loop handles, touch latches, things like that wouldn't really make a difference in terms of the usability of these. So in this particular kitchen, we played around with the idea about how do we eliminate these problematic areas, which we talked about last week, which is, storage high in wall cabinets and people having to reach up too high to get the stored items, or even operate dangerously to get these items. So we experimented with this kitchen design. So here's kitchen with a shallow under counter dishwasher that doesn't require that you reach down so far. And again, in a small dwelling, this may be just a perfect size to accommodate one person. We have the drawer bases in 3 different locations. We did include a lowered work surface. It might be the surface that you put the microwave on, although the table that's in the kitchen could also serve as that lowered work surface as well. As I say, we eliminated wall cabinets. You could easily add some back, maybe not even full height wall cabinets. So you can provide that storage at a lower level. We did include an alcove here, and you could put the microwave there. You could put other kinds of storage. We have a drawer base in there now, but you could put our favorite kind of storage in there, which is pantry style storage, which can go up higher because you've got so much lower storage that's also available. So there's a lot of different varieties of pantry style storage. Higher end and more affordable versions as well. When you're thinking about kitchen appliances, front or side controls, we're pretty consistent with that. And in terms of any wall mounted appliances, making sure again that those controls aren't any higher than 48 inches, including microwaves. So this is just one of many varieties of electric front control ranges. We know these days that induction stovetops seem to be the gold standard for safety, since they don't have hard burners, but the front controls limit people's need to reach over hot cooking items, since the controls are at the front. Again, just like with the washer and dryer, you can see them more easily, you can manipulate them more easily. They're right at the front of the unit. Or you could even, there's another option for ranges we've seen, of course, which is the 2 oven option, where the top oven, kind of like the dishwasher we showed, not so deep. You don't have to reach in so far, down so low to operate it. This shows one location of a microwave, happens to be on top of a counter in an alcove. And this shows one kind of configuration that might be workable. Another kitchen design that shows a lowered work surface at the end of a run of counters. It could even be hinged, for that matter. We have the front controls on the range. We have one version of a usable refrigerator with a side-by-side. We've got showing again the shallow depth dishwasher. And we also show an alternate location for a microwave, which is the under counter version that slides out. And we like the versions that have controls that are viewable from the top as opposed to the side. Just makes it easier. Not hard to get continuous countertop between stove and sink. And we've already mentioned that we like to see one lowered work surface designated one way or another in the kitchen, so that someone who maybe can't stand for as long, at least, could sit and could work out, or maybe someone who uses a wheelchair could have that work surface as well. So in living room and flex space, we know that a whole lot depends upon people's furniture choices and furniture locations, and try as we might as designers to anticipate that and to design for maximum utility can be a challenge. Nevertheless, we're asking you to kind of put yourselves in the place of users. And as you show us your designs with the furniture layouts, think about whether these are flexible enough to work with folks if they have even a walker, if they're using canes or crutches, or maybe even a wheelchair. Could it be adaptable to those folks? And in these small dwellings, it's a real challenge, right? We'll talk about some other options to how to maximize utility of space in a minute. But think in terms of that. Same thing for the bedroom. We need to be able to anticipate the need for folks to have additional space needs adjacent to beds and around beds. So allowing for some aisles on both sides, at least one side of the bed, and between the bed and the furniture is important. And then maximizing storage. It's kind of the same thing with the storage in the kitchen. It's maximizing the storage in the 18 to 54 inch reach range. So this is a slide we borrowed from a long ago slideshow for emphasizing a particular product, but it shows you the space next to a bed if someone were to use a wheelchair. And it shows how these bifold doors can be a problem. There's a great product years ago where they allowed the bifold door to fold flat back against the wall, but whether you have bifold doors or not, this just shows the kind of space you need to be accounting for, about 3 feet in width to allow for maneuvering. I mentioned kind of what might be some interesting product selection in the window area. There's a lot going on now in this old style. I don't know what they call it, appliance or a home feature, but Murphy beds that fold up into a wall. Whether they're coming back again, they've always been around, and I just haven't noticed, but they seem to be proliferating these days, I guess, with smaller dwellings. There's a lot of different design styles that include work surfaces and couches on the underside, and it's really interesting stuff. And even beyond that, these high-tech moving walls or higher-tech moving walls that can then convert space from one use during the day to another use at night and kind of create a bedroom space by rolling this wall out. And again, finding these kinds of products that might work well for older adults, might work well used by older adults, would seem to be key. So we'd love to see some interesting designs in this area as well. So we talked about a lot of the physical space stuff. Now there's other qualities here in terms of indoor environmental quality. We know that more attention is being paid in recent years, not just in home environments, but in office environments as well, to the kind of air quality inside. And there's a lot that could be done, I know, with HVAC equipment, but choosing products at the front end that limits off-gassing can make a big difference. We know that older adults experience higher levels of respiratory issues, and paying attention to that in the design, I think, would make sense. Lighting is another area where we know that older eyes need more brightness. Layered lighting is one way to do that. You can't layer lighting everywhere. And a lot of the kind of task lighting can be with consumer purchase lighting, lamps, table lamps, and so on. But think about layered lighting in cases where that's proper, to add additional light where it's needed. So switches and controls matter. These small details, where light switches are located, easy to operate light switches, where thermostats are located, again, matter a great deal. And this shows you a bunch of the possible vertical orientations of some of these various switches. Outlets no lower than 18 inches. All other operating controls no higher than 48 inches, including the electrical panel, always something that's kind of forgotten about. It needs to be in a location that's accessible and a location that's reachable, with floor space in front of it and with height, mounting height kept in mind. So this just kind of reiterates part of what I've said in terms of the heights and locations of outlets and controls. Additional outlets, I think, matter a lot in our lives. Older adults might need medical equipment, for example. All of us are using more and more electrical items and appliances, including adding an outlet near the toilet in the bathroom for the possible future installation of a bidet, which again can help with hygiene. And if you're having trouble managing hygiene, it can make a big difference in your life in terms of being independent. And another graphic that shows control heights and outlet heights and what we like to see, and the kinds of switches. These have been around for a long while, these rocker switches. I'm sure there's improvements on them that people might have used or be using now. We'd love to see that if that's possible. But they seem to offer a lot of functionality where you can use them with your hand, with your finger, with your elbow, in some cases with your hip, to operate the controls with empty hands and with full hands, or hands that can grasp easily or not. So we love those. as examples of easy to use controls. So whole house functionality really comes down in this circumstance to maintenance issues. Low maintenance items outside, particularly low maintenance decking and cladding, meaning that you have to paint or stain infrequently, if at all, can make a difference. And one of the advantages of older adults moving into a accessory dwelling in many cases is the downsizing possibility and the lowered maintenance that offers. And we think that needs to be continued through some of the products choices in those areas. So that's the quick tour of the particular features that we're talking about with this design competition. So we think that if by including these and others, if you choose to, of course, you could go beyond this, that you'll have a house that results in something that's much higher function than traditional housing, that really emphasizes someone's ability to live in the house. And from an individual's perspective, can be a real benefit because you can delay moves to expensive care settings. We talked about universally designed accessory dwellings being more affordable than traditional housing. We can also save money at the same time. We think that because of the design of these dwellings, that individuals and even their caregivers can experience fewer injuries. Stairs alone can help with that. Bathroom design, where other falls happen a lot, can help with that as well. It's physical health. It's also improved mental health. If I can maintain my activities of meaning and purpose and my connection with family and community life, I'm going to be a happier person with improved mental health. And it provides us really with more choices. Choices is part of what this is all about. I mean, I don't mind if someone comes to shovel my walk. I may mind more if I need help in the bathroom. And this, living in houses like this allows us to maintain those kinds of choices for longer into our lives. As I mentioned, part of the flexibility of this is that the customizations you may need to make, which we'll all need to make, will be much lower cost than otherwise traditional kinds of housing. And to the extent that it matters in a person's family's particular circumstances, they're also more marketable. Anyone can be looking at these houses and think of themselves living in them, not just as specialty housing for special folks. And it's true that we need to keep in mind that over the life of the dwelling, a number of different people might be living in them. So it might be an older adult initially. Initially, it may be a renter that helps sustain an older adult in the primary residence. So think about all the frontline retail workers and frontline workers of all kinds in your community. We think of this perhaps as a kind of workforce housing as well as kind of missing middle housing. Easier for movers to get heavy things like appliances in and out of the house is a really an everyday activity that's a real benefit to folks. And sure, it might be an older adult who uses a piece of equipment now or in the future, or even, as the basis for a more customized house, it might be an adult who uses a wheelchair. So if you're starting with a basis of a universally designed home, the customizations will be far less significant than otherwise might be the case with traditional housing. So we like to think of these as, designed for and about older adults, but really nothing about them would suggest that they wouldn't work well for almost everybody at all stages of life. So as I said, might be the older adult, and that's what we're really thinking about. It might be their caregiver, might be a renter that helps maintain them in their primary residence, might be adult children, other family members, lots of changes over the life of the occupancy of the dwelling, but more universally designed so everyone can find a place in them to live safely and independently. I'll repeat, I think I mentioned this last time, the scoring criteria. We are emphasizing aging in place so that half of the points allotted will go towards that. We'd love to see interesting ways to promote lower cost construction. We'd love to see what you have to say about that and what your ideas are. And we love designs that might be adaptable in various subtle ways to various sites and with respect to the architectural context of Raleigh. So we'd love to see what you have to offer in that area. I'll repeat here that we've got the competition guide with all logistics that's available through our landing page, which I'll mention again in a second. I showed you the design criteria document. We've got the design guidance document, which is an adjunct to that, and lots of other resources, some of which I'll mention quickly as I move through the end of this presentation. So here's the landing page. It's long but simple, betterlivingdesign.org/ADU for Raleigh. The resources page is available, through the landing page, but also directly. If you think about betterlivingdesign.org/ADU competition resources. Again, Hannah is the person to direct all questions to initially. Our UDI website has resources in all these areas of housing: multifamily, accessory dwellings, new homes, adapting homes, older adults, accessible housing. All that is reachable with links from the landing page. And we have a whole variety of resources there, whether it's infographics on our own Better Living Design criteria, resources on adapting houses or otherwise. In ARP, again, all these are reachable through the landing page. It has a variety of resources that deal with accessory dwellings. The ABCs of this, a very interesting step-by-step guide to design and development. This is useful for a lot of folks, particularly people who aren't that familiar with the development process in many places. So it has design ideas, some of which we've shown you today. And a video library is extolling the virtues of accessory dwellings and different examples of them. So this is us in Asheville. It shows my phone number, Institute's main phone number, and my email, and of course the many social media sites that we can be found at. So that's the end of this presentation. I will stop sharing and check back with Hannah to see if we've got any action on the questions. And you're on mute if you're.
I'm not seeing any questions.
Okay, that's fine. So again, this is the second of our two presentations. This is being recorded, it'll be found on the website. If you happen to be watching this first, you can go back to the website and click on the recording for the other intro that we did, which I think is essential if you're going to be applying